A very good morning to one and all. So let's start today's lecture by quickly revising what we did yesterday. The very first thing we saw yesterday was all about what are the various authentication techniques. It involves three types. Can you tell me which were the three types as a revision so that we can start?
Something
Something
you
you
have,
are,
something you
something
are,
you know,
something.
something you have.
Okay. I got it. Something you are, something you have, and something you know. Okay. These were the three types we saw yesterday. We started with something you know, that is passwords. We also saw what are the various ways by which we can provide security to our password. And towards the end, we also saw the various ways by which attackers try to hack into your password. They try to guess your passwords if they are very weak, and if they are strong enough, they take a long time for them to crack. Okay, so let me present my screen. I guess I have not presented my screen yet. Okay. Okay, so the very first thing we are going to learn today is we are going to first of all complete yesterday's topics. That is something you are and something you have. Okay, so I got this very beautiful PPT. I will be using this as a reference for today's lecture. I will be sharing this with you all. So first of all, let's start with a basic definition of what is access control, and then I will start with today's proceedings. Okay. Over here, it's very beautifully mentioned that access control is the heart of any information system, information security system. What do you mean by that? Why access control is the heart of any information security?
So, sir, the restrictions can be made at a proper times, and unauthorized accesses can be also prevented.
Correct. The main motive is to prevent unauthorized access, and all those who are having authorized access should get the access of that data. Basically, they should not be denied. So we are going to learn today. In case of biometrics, you are well aware of what are the various techniques we use in biometrics. We are also going to learn in detail what are the various biometric techniques. In biometrics, there is one concept of false acceptance rate and false rejectance rate. Okay, we'll see that. In such a case, what happens sometimes? Those people who are having authentic access to the system are rejected by the biometric machine. Why does it happen? It happens because of some reasons we are going to see today. So that should not happen ideally in an access control system. If the fault tolerant ratio is 1% or 2%, then it's okay. It simply means 98 to 99%. If you are a genuine user, you must get access to the system. That 1% is accepted as a fault tolerant rate. It should not go beyond that 1 or 2%. Okay, then only we can say that such a biometric system is good enough to handle real life situations. The most common technique in biometrics is fingerprints. We are going to learn what are the various ways in which fingerprints are being read and how fingerprints can be tampered. Okay, so let's start with today's lecture. We have already seen what is access control in this particular slide. According to this, it is the heart of any information security system. So let's proceed ahead. Before that, some questions. What is access? Okay, what is access mechanism, and what is access control? First of all, give me the answers of these one by one. What is access? You know what is access in real terms, right? But I want it in terms of uh, in technical terms. Basically, what could be access?
To be able to read, write, or execute a file
Okay,
or data.
correct. To be able to read, write, or execute files or a data, whatever the permissions we can say, the privileges we can say, or in simple terms, if I make it even more simple, I can say that access could be the right. Okay, let me show you the answers also. Access is nothing but the right. Right means your permissions or your privileges. For example, very well said by Jignesh, I guess. Access can be termed as the read, write permissions or execute permissions on a particular file. We generally say it in terms of access. For example, I have access to this file. It simply means I may be having some read access, write access, or execute access on a particular file. Clear? So basically, these all things are called as the right. Okay. Next up, what is access mechanism? Access mechanism is nothing but, as mentioned in the slide, it is the flow of information between subject and object. So now let me make things clear what is a subject and what is an object so that it becomes really simple for you to understand. Any idea before I explain it? If you know what could be a subject, what could be an object, then kindly let me know.
So the subject is the user and the object might be the thing he's trying to access.
Correct. Subject is the subject basically is a user or an entity who is trying to access a particular file, which is the object. Clear? So subjects are the entities who are trying to get access rights to a particular file, which is called as an object. Here, and the mechanism to protect the assets and the mechanism to protect these objects is called as access control. Clear? So we are going to learn access control just after we complete these two authentication types. So we would be done with authentication as well as authorization. Authorization is nothing but access control. I've already explained it earlier also, right? So let's get started with this: identification, authentication, and authorization. You have already seen what is identification in your yesterday's lecture. Identification is nothing but the method of establishing the person's identity, as we already know. For example, this could be done with the help of a public username. For example, I had given you an example of your email ID. Email ID is nothing but a thing which is public. Everyone can know your email ID if you wish to share it with all. But on the other hand, if you want to prove your identity, you need something. For example, a password of that email ID. You're getting what I'm trying to say. Your email ID is public, which is your identity. Or you can say that your Aadhaar card is public, your Aadhaar number is public, which proves your identity. But if you want to prove it physically, or if you want to prove your identity, you need some measure. That measure can be a password to an email ID. In this case, password is your private value and email ID is your public value. So if you're having something public, you should be having something private also to prove the public identity. For example, your email ID is public and your password is private. So to prove that such an email ID belongs to you, you should be able to use your password to access your email ID. The same thing goes with your Aadhaar card. If you know your Aadhaar number, it's okay. It may work in most of the cases. But when you need to authenticate yourself using your Aadhaar, you must provide some kind of biometrics. That could be your fingerprint. For example, you might have seen in during KYC process, they take your fingerprint. Now, even
I
during SIM cards. Yeah, yes.
can also, sir.
Can you repeat, please?
Sir, I scan.
Eye
I
scan, yeah, correct. Iris scan or fingerprint, but fingerprint is mostly used because it's cheaper as compared to every other biometric devices. So even while taking a SIM card, you might be needed. For example, your fingerprint might be needed to prove your Aadhaar number. So such thing. In this case, your Aadhaar is your identification, and whatever you are using as a private value is your authentication. For example, your password or your biometrics. So we have already seen what is authentication. One of the types we have already seen in the previous lecture. So in this lecture, we're going to start with the next two types, which are very interesting. Something you have and something you are. Okay, so I'm just quickly revising this, something you know, which you have already done. I will share this PPT with you all. First of all, passwords. Passwords are basically consisting of characters and strings. Just remember one thing: this cognitive password. This is a type of password. We have not done it before, so let's cover this now. There are these three types of passwords. First is a cognitive password. Second is a one-time password. We already know what is a one-time password, which keeps on changing. And third is a passphrase. So let's see these all one by one in detail. First of all, we'll start with cognitive passwords. Cognitive passwords, as you can see in the slide, these are something which are very easy to remember. For example, you might make a password out of something which have already happened with you, which has already happened with you in the past. For example, you are afraid of dogs. Okay, just take it as an example. For example, you are afraid of dogs, so you might keep your password as "I hate dogs" or "I am afraid of dogs," something like that. Okay. Similarly, you could keep your password as your pet's birthday, the day on which you actually acquired your pet, or any word. For example, you could keep your birthday, the best example of passwords. But again, these all can be cracked. These are not foolproof mechanisms, because if a person is if one of your friends uh, who is very close to you somehow tries to access your password, he or she may be able to crack your password. because first of all, he or she will try to enter those passwords only which are most probable, right? Which could be guessed really easily. For example, your birthday. He or she will try with your birth date first, and then with your mother's name, father's name, your favorite color, your dog's name, the school you graduated from, and so on. So, such passwords, which are very easy to remember from your side, but they are also very easy to crack from the hacker's point of view. Such passwords are called as cognitive passwords. Okay, clear with this?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you so much. So let's move on with the next type. You all already know it. I'm not going to focus a lot on this one-time passwords. Once you are done with the password, that password cannot be used again and again. Okay, the OTPs which you receive on your mobile phone can be termed as one-time passwords. Okay, so I'm moving ahead with passphrases. Passphrases are nothing but longer than passwords. It's basically a passphrase is nothing but a longer password. It could be a phrase, it could be a line, it could be a sentence which you can remember. Okay, so instead of creating a single word password or a non-dictionary password, what you can do is you can combine lot of words into a single word format, just like we saw yesterday, pay taxes on 15th April, whatever. So try to combine lot of words together into a single word and make a new password. That is what we call as a pass phrase instead of a pass word. Okay, so this was all about passwords, and we have already seen what are the various attacks against the passwords. We can move ahead with the next type of uh, authentication, that is something you have. This is very interesting to learn. Something you have, you might be knowing something, uh, you might be knowing some examples of this. For example, your memory cards, your smart cards, the devices using which, the hardware devices using which you can get access to a system, can be called as the second type of authentication, that is something you have. Any examples apart from these? Any real-time example, real life example?
Aadhaar card, PAN card, sir.
Aadhaar card, PAN card. Okay, apart from that, any electronic
ID card.
ID card?
No.
Okay,
RFID wale cards, sir.
correct. RFID or NFC wale cards. Have you seen them? Have you used them? Okay.
हाँ sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. सबसे कॉमन एग्जांपल RFID पे नहीं जाते उससे पहले. फॉर एग्जांपल मेट्रो पे हम लोग टोकन्स लेते हैं, राइट? So whenever you put that token on that metro ka door, it opens up, right? And while leaving the station, you have to drop that token. It simply looks like a coin. You have to drop it, and then the door again opens up for you. So what is it exactly? When you purchase that token from the ticket counter, they actually input some values on that token. Okay, and once you go to that door through which you need to pass, it detects that token value present inside that plastic chip or plastic token. So that is nothing but an access card using which you can get access to a particular service. In this case, the service is nothing but the door through which you want to go beyond the particular platform and catch your train, catch your metro. So same thing in real life. We can implement it using some other techniques. For example, I will show you what exactly I'm talking about. Tokens, what actually tokens look like in real life. Few of the examples are over here. A key, even a key can be considered as something you have kind of authentication. How? Because you can't use your neighbor's key on your lock, right? I'm not talking about master keys, forget about those. Just think that you're staying the neighbor just staying basically the neighbor can't use his or her key on your lock. Is it possible? If you try to do it, you may end up breaking your key, or you may end up damaging your lock. So you won't get access at all to your resource. In this case, the resource is nothing but your house or your home you wish to enter, right? So in such a case, what happens is you have a key. That key is a private component, and the lock is a public component. So you wish to access that public component with the help of a private component, which is key in this case. You're getting what I'm trying to say? Similarly, documents. Documents are nothing but, as well explained, document could be Aadhaar card. Aadhaar card could be either a plastic card, or it could be your Aadhaar number also, the soft copy also. So such things are something you have kind of authentication. Similarly, I have already explained token devices. these smart tokens which we use for metro and any other travel purpose. Similarly, memory cards. Even memory cards nowadays can be used as something you have. Similarly, your smart cards, your railway smart cards, or whichever is having a chip embedded inside, can be used as something you have kind of authentication method. Okay, so let me show you the very first type, which is yeah, boliye.
सर मेमोरी कार्ड्स में लाइक पेन ड्राइव्स का एग्जांपल दे रहे हो ना, जैसे
No,
पेन ड्राइव्स जो
flash cards,
एक्सेसिबल होता है
SD
पासवर्ड के
cards.
लिए.
Even memory
हाँ
cards
मतलब
can be-
सर
even
एसडी
memory
कार्ड्स.
cards can be used if programmed correctly.
ओके श्योर,
Okay.
थैंक यू.
So let's take an example of the very first type, which is a token device. Let me show you first how a token device looks like, and then I can show you the process. This is how a token device looks like. On the background, you can see this is your actual safe. Safe is nothing but it is having some documents, and you need to access these documents with the help of a token device, which is nothing but a handheld device. Okay. So can anyone tell me what exactly is the procedure? How does it work? Before I explain you.
या तो इंफ्रा पे होगा या फिर रेडियो वेव्स पे होगा, मतलब पिन डाला तो मे बी मतलब उधर वेरीफाई होएगा.
Okay. NFC sort of near field communication sort
या
of.
एनएफसी सॉर्ट ऑफ.
Okay. What else? If I want to do it on a network without using NFC, can I do it? Suppose they are connected to Wi-Fi. Okay, now take this example. They are connected to Wi-Fi and I want to access the safe using this token device. Is it possible? I'm just asking as a blank questions. Even I may not be
Yes,
having
sir.
answers. Okay, we can do so, right? Okay, so now let me show you the exact working of this. It's having two types. First of all, let's understand what is a token device. Just read it out. It's a hardware hybrid. Basically, it's a hybrid device. It consists of a software embedded inside it, as well as it is a hardware device. Okay, which is basically used to verify an identity in the authentication process. So how do we verify the identity? We have already seen. We need to verify it with the help of some private component. So in this case, the private component is nothing but a pin. For example, if you are having the ATM card, the ATM card is your public component. But whenever we enter the 4-digit PIN number, it becomes your private component. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to combine the hardware as well as the software components together, and then we are able to access the resource. In this case, your bank account details or your money withdrawn from the ATM device. So similar kind of a technique is used over here. This hardware device is linked with the safe, either with the help of some NFC near field communication, or we can also put them inside a network, inside a firewall with the help of Wi-Fi. So what we can do is, the very first time when I want to access the safe, I need to access it using a PIN number on my handheld device. I should first of all enter the PIN number on my device. Once I am authenticated, I will get access to the safe. So in this case, what is happening? You are required to carry the hardware device along with your PIN number. So if anyone steals your hardware device, he or she might not be able to access the safe. Why? Because you need to have the PIN number also. Okay, this is first step verification. What is the next step verification? Next step verification is, you can see that the safe is also having an LCD screen, right? So after you enter your PIN number on your token device, there will be some random numbers shown on the screen. Okay, you have to enter some response to that random number on your handheld device. So that becomes your second step of authentication, or two-step verification we can call. I will show you what exactly I'm talking whenever I will scroll down and show you the two methods by which this particular token device works. So far, any doubts? You got what exactly I'm talking about, the token device? What is this LCD is all about? Okay. If you want, just read it.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Basically, token device or password generator is usually a handheld device that has an LCD display and possibly a keypad. This is the entire scenario I have just explained. Now let's see what are the various mechanisms by which these work. Okay. As I told you, we can have this token device inside a perimeter, inside a firewall, which is also called as DMZ, demilitarized zone. Okay, let me write it over here. It's called as a demilitarized zone or a DMZ. What exactly it means is the network which you're trying to access is well bound by a firewall system. It is only accessible from within the network, and no outsider can enter into that network. It is similar to your NFC. जितना उसका range होगा, for example, Bluetooth 10 meters range. Similarly, जितना उसका range होगा, only that much area is uh, available to interact with the device. उसके बाहर आप जैसे जाओगे, you can't interact with the device. So same kind of environment is created around the safe. Okay, so once you enter into the DMZ or once you enter inside the network, then only you could access the device. Otherwise, you won't be able to access it. So we are reducing the chances of wiretapping or sniffing. If I put it directly on a Wi-Fi without any firewall, then it would be really easy to crack and read the traffic. But if I'm using a DMZ or a firewall protected network, then it becomes really difficult for attackers to wiretap or sniff the communication. Okay. Similarly, I told you that it provides two-factor authentication. First, it requires your PIN number. First, it requires you to have that hardware, then your PIN number, and then something which will be shown on the LCD. You need to type it on your hardware device. So we are adding two-factor authentication to remove the chances of fake authentication. Okay. Similarly, obviously, these are the limitations. The limitations could be human error. For example, there is something shown on the LCD, ABCD, and you're typing something else. So this is nothing but a human error which may cause false authentication alerts. Okay. Similarly, battery limitations, obviously, it's a hardware device, so we can have battery limitations. And third is the token itself. Token itself means your token device itself may get stolen. Okay, that is one of the drawbacks. But again, you can't bypass it because you need the PIN number also. Okay, so these are the benefits and limitations of this token device. If it is clear till now, I can proceed ahead and show you the various types of token devices. Okay, kindly let me know.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So types of token devices, these are basically of two types, synchronous and asynchronous. As we all know, synchronous means related to time, and asynchronous means it's not related to time. Okay, so I will not show you the definition first. I will show you the diagram first, then I will come back to it. Let's have a look. This is how a synchronous kind of an environment looks like. Synchronous token. I'm reading step by step points. Is the screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, if the font is not visible, I will read it out. Don't worry. Step number one. Step number one is, you can see this is your safe, right? On the left hand side. Every minute the clock reading is enciphered. I'm reading it out. Every minute the clock reading is enciphered with a secret key. So every minute what happens is the clock reading keeps on changing, and that clock reading is enciphered or encrypted with a secret key and displayed. This is the one-time password. The thing which I was saying earlier, that you need to type in something which is shown on the LCD screen. This is the thing which you need to enter on your keypad, on your token. Okay. So assume that something is shown on the LCD screen. So basically the clock reading or the time is shown on the LCD screen, which is basically encrypted with the help of some secret key. Okay. Step number two. Step number two is the user reads the secret key and along with the PIN enters the data into the workstation. So what the user does is the user reads that value, which is displayed on the screen, and types it on his keyboard as in the token device, along with the PIN number that only the user is aware of. So this is where the two-factor authentication comes into picture. जो भी screen पे दिख रहा है वो तो वो लिखेगा ही. Along with that, user has to enter the PIN number also. So this basically creates a message which is composed of the value which was displayed on the screen along with the PIN number. It's a combination of both of these things. Okay. So only the user will be aware of the PIN number. Of course, if you have not shared your PIN number with your friends, don't ever do that. So basically, only the user who is having the PIN number will get access to the computer. Third step is authentication. Whatever the user has entered, that data will be verified on the server. If it matches, then the user will be granted the access. Now, whatever is present beyond that particular safe is not our concern. Our concern is only about authenticating the user. Once the authentication is done, the services or the resources are granted back to the user. Clear? Any doubts with this? This is what we call as synchronous authentication using a token. Why synchronous? Because we are encrypting the current time with a secret key. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if no doubts are being arising over here, so I can move ahead with the second type. But before that, read the definition. I was in a hurry, so kindly read it now. Synchronous token devices, a synchronous token device synchronizes with the authentication service by using time or a counter as the core piece of authentication process. We saw what exactly happened, right? The time was encrypted using a secret key. The time is used as a medium of encryption, as a medium of authentication. Clear? In the next type, that is asynchronous token, we'll see it makes use of a challenge response kind of a scheme. You might be aware of this challenge response. If not, let me explain. Challenge response is nothing but the machine will give you some value as the machine will display you some value. You have to enter a response to that particular value. For example, you might be aware of the TCP handshaking methods. TCP handshake pata hoga. If I send SYN, I should expect an acknowledgement from the receiver, right? So same type of thing happens over here. Is if I send a challenge, I should receive a response from the receiver. So instead of time as the main parameter, we are using challenge response scheme in the second type. So let me show you how exactly it works. So these are the steps. Okay, very first step is the challenge value is displayed on the workstation. So over here on this workstation, the challenge value will be displayed. Point number 2 is the user enters the challenge value and the PIN number into the token device. Okay, so very first step is challenge value will be displayed on the workstation. Second step is the user enters the challenge value and a PIN number into the token device. Third step is the token device presents a different value to the user. This is where the challenge is getting responded with. Now have a look carefully. Step number 1 में क्या हुआ? Challenge was displayed on the workstation. Step number 2 में the user enters the challenge value and the PIN number which he or she is aware of into the token device. Okay, so right now the challenge has been entered into the token device. Step number 3 is all about uh, uh, giving some response to that challenge. So now what could happen is, for example, I'm sending the challenge value as 1, 2, 3, 4. The response could be add a number to that challenge, add a digit to that challenge. So it could be 1, 2, 3, 5 instead of 1, 2, 3, 4. So what I'm doing is, जैसे ही मुझे challenge value मिलेगा, I can increment it by 1 and send it back to the authentication server. So once the authentication server receives the response, he or she will decrement 1 from that machine, from that number which it receives, and it compares with the challenge value which it had sent in step number 1. If both of these values are same, then only the authentication is granted to the user. Otherwise, the authentication will not be granted. समझा ये process? If yes, then kindly let me know. If no, then again kindly let me know.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let me complete the steps. Step number 3 was all about the token device presents a different value to the user. Here I am assuming that the challenge is incremented by 1. Any operation, any particular method could be designed which basically provides a response to a challenge. I am just taking an example where I am incrementing the challenge value by 1. Okay, so let's assume that whatever value was sent by the workstation in point number 1, I'm incrementing it by 1 in step number 3. Step number 4 is the user enters the new value into the workstation. So what the user does is the user enters the incremented value, that is 1, 2, 3, 5 into the workstation in point number 4. Point number 5 is the value is sent to the authentication server on the authentication service on the server. So that authentication server then checks in point number 6 whether the number is same as it is expecting. Point number 7 is if the number is same as the expected number, then only the user is granted access to the resources, and that is what we call as an asynchronous token device. Clear? It was a new thing for me also, so I hope you like this particular concept. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. This actually happens in industries where they work with highly confidential data. So first of all, they need to remember their passwords or PIN numbers. Along with that, they need some kind of a token device also. Otherwise, they won't be granted access to the resources. Okay. So let's move on to the next type, which is memory card. Memory card, as we all know, can store various values. For example, over here, a memory card holds information but cannot process it. What is the difference? I will tell you whenever I move ahead. A memory card can hold a user's authentication information. For example, user ID or PIN number. It could also store a lot of textual information, factual information, but it cannot process it. How to process it? We can process it with the help of a smart card. Smart cards hold the information as well as process the information. So what we can differentiate between these two is memory cards are basically memory devices which can store your information, but we can't process that information because they are not smart enough. They are not having that chip inside. On the other hand, memory cards can hold as well as process the information. Clear? That's why for authentication purpose, we can make use of smart cards. Memory cards can hold your information, and if we embed it with a chip which can process the information, then it becomes a smart card. For example, it can store your PIN numbers, your passwords. Okay, with the help of the smart card, you can simply insert the smart card into the smart card holder, smart card reader, and it will read your data. Most common example is your ATM card. ATM cards are memory cards as well as smart cards. Why? Because it is nowadays we are having ATM cards which are coming inbuilt with a chip. Previously we were having only the magnetic strip, right? So now the magnetic strip ATM cards are becoming obsolete, and the new ones or the new generation of smart cards are coming into picture. With the help of those, you might have seen advertisements. We can even make payments using the NFC card, contactless payments. It happens with the help of those NFC embedded smart cards or smart chips. Okay, those cards can even be used for authentication. But again, it is having a risk because anyone can carry your smart card on your behalf. So that's why NFC is having its advantages as well as disadvantages, especially contactless ones. So if you people are using credit cards or smart cards which are embedded or which are having NFC enabled, I would suggest you should drop your limit of spending to 2,000, 3,000 rupees, not more than that. Otherwise, if you visit any what you say point of sales, point of sales, for example, DMart में जा रहे हो, आप Reliance में जा रहे हो, the machines which actually are used to swipe your card, they are so sensitive that even if you pass beyond it and you are having that NFC card in your pocket, they can be used for hacking. Hackers can hack into that smart card device and they can get hold of your credentials very easily. Only if you restrict your payment spendings. For example, I have restricted my NFC card to only 1,000 rupees, so that if I wish to buy anything within 1,000, I can do it without my PIN number. But if the transactions go beyond 1,000 rupees, it will ask me for my PIN number. So in case any attack happens on me, I am safe enough that only 1,000 rupees tak ka ghata hoga, usse upar nahi hoga. So that you can do with your smart cards or NFC cards, which or cards which are basically having NFCs, especially your credit cards. Okay, I hope this was useful. So let's move ahead with the type of cards. We have already seen the various types of cards: contact cards and contactless cards. Contact cards are similar to your ATM cards, okay, with the chip embedded onto it, the gold-plated chip. And contactless cards we have already discussed just now, the NFC-based cards. Okay, these are the attacks I was talking about previously on the NFC cards: micro probing attacks, eavesdropping techniques, Trojan horse attacks, and social engineering attacks. Let me focus more on the micro probing attacks. Micro probing attacks can be considered as your what you can say, The skimming attacks. You are aware of the skimming attacks? Kindly let me know if you are aware of the
Fake messages,
fake क्या?
different fake messages, sir.
नहीं नहीं, I'm
Different
not talking
message
about
that
phishing. I'm talking about skimming, not scheming. SKIMMING. मैंने बताया होगा पहले. Just try to recollect. Skimming, ATM skimming. सुना होगा आपने. WhatsApp पे बहुत वायरल हुए थे बीच में. डायग्राम दिखाने तो क्लियर हो जाएगा. See this diagram.
सर वो कार्ड का कॉपी बना लेता है ना?
Correct. Cloning. See this diagram. आपने ये केस स्टडी देखा होगा. Basically, this is an ATM machine on top of which a skimming device is being fit. ये skimming device क्या होता है? Skimming device is basically having a card reader inside it. बहुत सस्ती device है. You can even get it for 200-300 rupees if you buy it in wholesale. Okay. So what the attackers do is they get hold of such a device. It works on a battery. It is connected to the Wi-Fi network. Wherever the attacker is present, he or she can control it from there. So what exactly happens is the attackers physically plant such a skimming device on top of the actual card reader present on any ATM. You can see it's really difficult to detect whether the ATM machine is tampered with or not. You can see the green color device which the person is holding in his hand. It is nothing but a skimming device. This skimming device actually reads the contents of your ATM card. So can this skimming device alone be used to carry out an attack? Yes or no?
No, sir. There
Yes.
is also a camera over there to hold
Correct.
to record the pin.
Correct. Very good. Only the device itself is not capable enough to carry out the attack. There is a small pinhole camera attached on top of the keypad. Whenever you enter the pin number, it tracks your keypad keystrokes, or the numbers which you have entered, and directly sends them to the attacker. So this is how micro probing attacks or skimming attacks take place in real life. There is one more thing. आपने देखा होगा keyloggers तो आपको पता ही है. You know what are keyloggers. There are some transparent sheets available in the market, which when placed on top of a keypad, they keep on tracking the intensity with which you press on a particular button. I'm not having the diagram right now, or I would have shown it. Those transparent films are basically digital film, though not digital, electronic piece of films using which they actually track the pressure you put on a certain word. For example, if you press on a particular letter on your keypad, it will automatically send the intensity with which you press on that particular keypad. Basically, it's all about what you can say. जो नंबर आपने अभी recently press किया होगा, that value will be highlighted and sent to the attacker. It's basically hardware kind of a keylogger. Whenever you are entering any value into the keyboard or the keypad, that value will be sent automatically, stroke by stroke, to the attacker. So this is how the attackers carry out such kind of an attack, which is called as a skimming attack, or what you can say, a micro probing attack. So I hope you got this particular point. So be really careful whenever you access any ATM. Just check whether there is any differences you notice in the ATM. You can even try to touch the reader or the card reader physically and check whether it is tampered or not. If it is tampered, it will automatically come out. But ऐसा नहीं है कि जाके हर मशीन पे जाके आप ऐसा ट्राई करोगे, फिर आपको ही अंदर डाल देंगे. So don't do this. So just if you are feeling that the machine is suspicious, you can just touch it and feel it. अगर आपको लग रहा है कि this has been tampered, then you should lodge a complaint. वहाँ पे कैमरा होता ही है ATM में. You can even fill up the form. Security वाले को बोलो कि यहाँ पे कुछ हुआ है, and then you can lodge a complaint in the nearest police station as well. So be aware of what exactly is happening in and around your surroundings. So this was all about the second type. Okay. So in the meantime, let me drop in the attendance link, and then I will start with this third type. इतना होता है करते हैं, and then we'll move on. Okay. So have a look. I've dropped in the attendance link. Kindly fill in the attendance. In the meantime, let me start with the next topic, which is something you are. So the third type, something you are, is all about what we are going to discuss. We're going to discuss about the biometrics. Okay. So this is basically a special case of something you have. Why so? Because in this case, the thing you have is present inside you. Yes or no? This is not a hardware we are talking about. This is about your own special characters, your own features, which are distinct, which are unique for every single person. For example, your fingerprint, your retina scan, your iris scan, hand geometry, facial scan, and we are also having two or three other methods. For example, your let me show you this one, the hand veins. The veins characteristic of your hand, the veins which are present inside your hand, are also distinct. These are also what you can say unique. Okay, hand geometry is obviously unique, but your veins structure is also unique. No two people can have the same vein structure. Even I got to know it 2 or 3 days back only. So there are many things which can be added to biometrics. For example, at some point of time, the hair can also be termed as a biometric feature. Why hairs? Because hair consists of DNA, and DNA structures are also unique, but in some cases DNA structures might be same in case of congenital twins. Okay, yeah, protein structures, correct. Protein structures are different. So in one of the feedback questions, I had asked you whether hair is biometric or not. I received many answers as no, but that could be a yes as well, because hairs also consist of DNA structures, and no two people can have the same DNA except congenital twins. Okay, so that can also be considered as a biometric feature. Okay, so if you get to know any other thing apart from these many things which could be considered as unique for each individual, kindly let me know whenever you get time so that we can discuss upon them. Okay, so in your syllabus you can highlight these 5 points. These are more than enough. We'll discuss each one of them in detail. Let's start with one of the types. Okay, this is basically what exactly is biometric system. I will share the slides with you. First of all, start with fingerprints. We all know fingerprints are unique. Okay, so what exactly makes the fingerprints unique? Let me show you this diagram if it is visible. Obviously the text won't be that visible, but I will try to read it out. This is how a fingerprint structure looks like. There are few technical terms, for example, a ridge, lake, delta, and fork. Fork is nothing but that point where the fingerprint splits into two different regions. uh, okay, I will show I will show it in the next time. I will show you in the next lecture properly by drawing it out, but let me discuss it once in this particular lecture. Fork, you have seen a fork. Basically a fork splits in two ends, okay, like your split ends. Similarly, forks split in two ends. Over here you can see in this particular diagram, from this region the fork is splitting into two sections. Similarly, a delta is nothing but a region over here which looks like a what you can say, delta is nothing but a region which looks like a hill like structure. It grows from that particular region, the split occurs. Over here you can see that it's a gap present between two ridges. Okay, over here if I can zoom it up, this is the region I'm talking about. This is a delta. A gap between two particular lines is called as delta. Okay, similarly, next up, we are having this region which is called as a lake. You can see a lake is nothing but a gap present between the lines or between the ridges. Over here you can see this is a continuous line, and in between over there is a circular formation. This is what we call as a lake. Similarly, a ridge end, wherever the ridge ends is called as a ridge end. So over here in the case of a delta, this is a ridge end, this is a ridge end, and in between the space is called as a delta. So delta is nothing but the space between two ridge ends. Similarly, we are having two or three more definitions. Let me show you. Over here you can see that uh, if obviously biometrics has its shortcomings. They are not foolproof. Why? Because if the top layer of your skin uh, anyhow gets changed due to external factors, for example in the winters you might notice that the fingerprint readers don't detect your fingers properly. That happens because your skin sheds off, right? ऊपर का layer निकल जाता है skin का. That is the main reason why biometrics don't detect the fingerprints properly during winters. One more reason could be sweat pores. Whenever you are having your fingers wet or whenever you are having your fingers sweaty, that time the fingerprint reader won't be able to detect it, because you can see over here these are the dots which have been shown over here. These are sweat pores giving the appearance of a dotted ridge, which is basically it is not a dotted ridge. It is happening because of the sweat pores present inside or present in between your fingerprints. So that is the reason the fingerprints are not detected correctly. That gives rise to your definition of false acceptance or false rejectance. I will show you whenever we meet up in the next lecture. So far, okay. So far we have done it. Done what exactly is biometrics and what are its drawbacks. So let me explain the definition and then we'll stop our lecture today. We'll
Well, the lecture is up to 12:10.
okay, I forgot. Sorry. So I can continue. Yeah, actually, भूल गया था. Okay. So let's see. Fingerprints. Every person's fingerprint is unique. Obviously, you know that, and these are the reasons why we can't uh, blindly trust on any fingerprint device, because at some point of time the fingerprint reader won't be able to correctly identify whether it belongs to a particular person or not. These are the drawbacks, basically the sweat pores, the external factors which actually arise to the fingerprints getting vanished, but they don't vanish for permanent reasons. They vanish for temporary reasons. For example, you might have heard or you might have read that manual laborers, जो daily workers है, laborers है, उनका उनके fingers का top जो skin है, that gets damaged because of continuous exposure to sunlight, continuous exposure to silica, cement, etc. So continuous rubbing of the skin may cause the top layer of the skin getting damaged, and as a result, they won't be able to use their fingerprints as a biometric, right? Biometric authentication. So every biometric activity or every biometric technique has its drawbacks. So this is one of the drawbacks of biometrics. Okay. Next up, this is clear. Fingerprint is understood properly, so that I can move ahead.
Yes,
Okay. So in the exam, you may face a question. Write the drawbacks of fingerprint-based authentication techniques. So you need to write those drawbacks which we have discussed so far. For example, the false acceptance and the false rejectance rate. I will show you the examples below. Okay. The external factors such as the skin getting ruptured, sweat pores, or water present in between the pores at that time. For example, you might have noticed Aadhaar card registration के time पे you are being asked कि अपना finger wipe करो properly and then go for the registration. Otherwise, once your fingerprints are registered in an incorrect fashion, then you won't be able to prove your authentication or prove your identity anytime later with the same fingerprint. Obviously, अगर मेरा card खो जाए तो I can replace it with a new card, but I can't replace my fingerprint. Yes or no? So you have to make sure whether your fingerprint registration has happened correctly. Wipe off any dirt or any external reasons which are causing your fingerprint to get registered incorrectly. जो भी reasons है उनको साफ करो and then go for the authentication or the registration of any sort. Okay. Then comes your retinal scan. Retinal scan obviously is much powerful as compared to fingerprints, but again the cost increases. If you want 100% result, then you must spend a lot on the registration device. In this case, a retinal scan is done with the help of a retinal scanner or a camera which is capable of scanning the capillary patterns of the retina. Now have a look at this diagram. You can see these are the capillary veins inside your retina. So you can't scan it with a normal camera. You require a retinal scanner, which is obviously costly. So you have to spend a lot if you want foolproof authentication for your organization. This can happen only in institutions which can spend a lot. Okay, so those institutions or organizations that don't want to spend a lot on just authenticating their employees during check-in and check-out during a 9 to 5 period, then they can go for fingerprint authentication. But in case of highly secured areas, for example, defense organizations, they can go for this technique which is called as retinal scan. Okay, so it is highly accurate. Many people are hesitant to use the device because obviously the mentality of human beings, they think that looking into a device where many people are actually using that device nowadays, it is not advisable also, because biometrics are not being used nowadays just to avoid the spread of coronavirus. So in normal situations also, people are very hesitant to use such a device because a lot of people use that device. So because of hygiene issues or hygiene reasons, people may avoid using such a device because the camera or the retinal scanner comes really close to your eyes to capture your capillary pattern. So in some cases, people may want to avoid such a close contact with a hardware device. Nowadays, it is not advisable also, so don't go for any biometric activities. Don't even touch any biometric device because those devices are public. Many people might have used it, so kindly avoid it. Now we can proudly say stick back to the old school pen and paper method. It is advisable. Don't go for the biometrics now. Okay. Next up, we are having the iris scan. People get confused with iris and retina. Obviously, those who are aware of biology, they might easily differentiate between both of these, iris and retina. What we are talking about right now is iris and not about retina. This was retina, the inside activities, all the capillaries present inside the retina. Now we are talking about the iris. Iris is this particular part you can see in this diagram. Okay, the lens basically. Over here, how the iris scan works. Kindly have a look. I will highlight the points. Point number one is the scanner reads from the outer iris inwards to the pupil edge. Okay, the scanner basically starts from the edge to the internals or the insides. Then the scanner plots distinct markings on the iris and maps the unique shape. Basically, what it does is it scans the eye, it scans the iris, and makes proper positioning or proper plotting according to the features it finds out in between. I will show you a proper diagram in the next slide. After plotting the marks within the iris, all the data is saved on a database. And once the registration process is complete, during verification, it takes hardly 2 or 3 seconds to verify whether the person is, in fact, 1 or 2 seconds to verify the person is authentic or not. Okay, so just have a look at this registration process. The iris is scanned. Okay, it is done with the help of a video camera. This can be done with the help of a video camera. Okay, so it is cheaper as compared to your retinal scanning because retinal scan requires a high-end retinal scanner. But in the case of an iris scan, it can be done with a video camera from a distance of 3 to 10 inches. Once your iris is scanned, the enrollment process takes around 20 seconds of time, and then the verification process or the fourth step hardly requires 1 or 2 seconds. You simply have to look into the machine, into the camera, and your enrollment process, your registration process will be done. Okay, so let me show you an example. I guess I have. Okay, this is an example of a facial scan. The similar kind of an activity is done with the help of iris scan. What happens is the iris image is taken and it is being broken down into features. Those features are then saved onto the computer where it is used for recognition or authentication. The same thing happens over here, but in this case, instead of a complete face, we are making use of the eye or the iris. Correct? You got what I'm trying to say? Kindly let me know so that I can move ahead and try to finish it up.
Yep, samjha sir.
Okay. I've tried to make use of images wherever possible. This is hand geometry, what I was talking about. Hand geometry is again a biometric activity. No two people can have the same hand. Although they may look same, although they may appear as same, but again, they are having some distinct features. For example, the length of fingers, the thumb, the width, and the depth. These all things vary person to person. So this again can be considered as a biometric trait. Okay, what exactly the enrollment process consists of is it takes approximately 80 to 90 measurements of the length. You might have noticed while whenever you are entering your fingerprint on your mobile, you are registering your fingerprint on the mobile. It takes around 10 to 12 registrations. It asks you to move your finger in such a way in different direction such that the authentication process is smooth. In any fashion, you may touch your mobile phone with your finger and that may accept your fingerprint. Same thing happens over here. 90 measurements, approximately 90 measurements are taken of your hand with varied angles so that at any angle, if you put your hand, that machine would be able to recognize that particular hand. Okay, so this is basically again a biometric activity. Next up is keyboard dynamics. You might have heard about it. Have you heard about keystroke pattern as a biometric behavior? This can be obviously faked. This is not foolproof, but still it is considered as one of the biometric
सर
techniques.
ब्रेक हो रहा है आवाज सर.
How come? I will let you know. Okay. One second. Okay, is it audible now?
Yes sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So basically, the next type is keyboard dynamics. For example, if you wish
फिर से
to,
ब्रेक हो रहा है.
तो network का issue रहेगा. Okay. Let me try. Hello, hello. Keyboard dynamics. Is it audible now? Let me know. Or is it breaking a lot?
हाँ सर, थोड़ा नॉइज़ी है बट ठीक है, चलेगा.
Okay. Last.
ऑडिबल है पर सर थोड़ा सा डिस्टर्बेंस है बट इट्स फाइन.
Okay, let's 5 minutes बचे. Wind up कर देते हैं. ठीक है. So basically, keyboard dynamics is all about the speed at which you type something. For example, my typing speed may be different from your typing speed. I may be typing, suppose, 72 words per minute. You may be typing at a speed of 80 to 90 words per minute. So basically, this is termed as a behavioral pattern in which the keystroke timing is different for each individual. This is also termed as keyboard dynamics, and it comes in basically two variants, or you can say the two parameters on the basis of which we decide keyboard dynamics is dwell time and flight time. Dwell time is nothing but the amount of time one holds a particular key, and the flight time is simply about the amount of time one moves between the keys. So dwell time and flight time, if we compare with with person to person, that may keep on changing, which again could be termed as a biometric feature. Okay, so again, this can be faked, this can be spoofed, this is not 100% accurate, but still it is considered as one of the features with the help of which we can authenticate a person using biometrics. Okay, next up is voice print. Voice print is nothing but your voice samples. For example, I did my bachelor's project on a topic which is called as speaker recognition, not speech recognition. I am talking about speaker recognition, where we identify who is the speaker. So what we did is we actually took the voice datagrams, voice samples of that particular user, stored it in our database. Whenever the user speaks something into the system, his voice samples get stored, and it is being compared with the value which is already present in my database. If both the voice samples are matched with an 80 to 90% accuracy, then only that particular person is given access to the system. Otherwise, the system rejects its claim. So this is what we call as a voice print. You might have seen this sort of a diagram while editing videos, while editing audios. So that is what we call as a waveform or a voice sample. This is again biometrics. Next up is facial scan. Again, this quite similar with the iris scan. The facial scan is used to capture your face image. It basically consists of 2-3 patterns. For example, the space between your eyes, the space between your nose, the space between this nose and the upper lip. These are certain features which are different for each individual. There are so many people in the world, but still there are some distinguishing features which differentiate each person differently. Okay, although there are chances that 2 or 3 people out of crores of such people might end up having the same sort of features, but it is quite difficult to have exactly same. 80 to 90% accuracy is okay, but 100% similarity is not possible. Okay, so this is what we call as facial scan. These are the various these are the various biometric techniques available in the market. Apart from that, as I had already explained, if you are aware of any more techniques, kindly let me know so that we can learn about them in detail. Okay, so last few things are left. Just give me 2 minutes, I will complete it. Okay, let me take the attendance. Okay. Okay. Last thing remaining is this particular biometric performance. For example, as already explained, there are two terms which are called as false rejection rate and false acceptance rate. What do you mean by false rejection rate? Can you please tell me? Anyone?
लाइक कोई
Can,
पर्सन ऑथेंटिकेटेड है लेकिन उसका लाइक आइरिस स्कैन या फिर फिंगरप्रिंट स्कैन रॉन्ग आ रहा है, लाइक
correct.
जैसे आपने बताया वो स्वेटी डस्ट की वजह से या इसकी वैसे रीजंस की वजह से.
बेसिकली सर
Correct.
ऑथेंटिकेटेड है बट एक्सेस नहीं मिलता.
Correct. That is what we call as false rejection rates. मतलब machine उसको falsely reject कर रहा है. Okay, he is although an authentic person, but due to any reasons, any external factors, that particular machine is not accurately identifying it with a database entry. So in such a case, that is called as false rejection rate. Similarly, exactly opposite is false acceptance rate. I am not authentic, but the machine assumes, or the biometric system assumes, that I have certain features which are matching with the database entry, and as a result I get the access to the system or the resources. That is what we call as false acceptance rate. Okay, so last thing left is this concept which is called as crossover error rate. Crossover error rate is basically a value when type 1 and type 2 errors. What is type 1? Type 1 is FRR and type 2 is FAR. When both of these values are exactly equal, then that particular condition is called as a crossover error rate. The last 2 points, most important, the lower the CER or lower the crossover error rate, higher will be the accuracy. Okay, so जितना कम आपका CER value होगा, उतना ज़्यादा आपकी accuracy होगी. Similarly, a system with CER of 5 has greater accuracy than a system with CER 6. Why? Because obviously 5 is lesser than 6. Lower the CER value, higher will be the accuracy. That's it for today's lecture. If you are having any doubts, kindly let me know. Kindly ask me, or else I could end this particular session. Okay, this was all about biometrics. In the previous lecture, we saw what is something you have, something you know. In this lecture, we saw two things. Those are something you have, the hardware part, the token structures, etc., and something you are, that is the biometrics. So I hope this was clear. I will share this PPT with you all in your Google Classroom. So kindly let me know if you're having any doubts, or else I could close the session.